Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Wolford again. Wolford the other way at the 30, the 40. Wolford to midfield. Miles Wolford with the pick. The Heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory. Williams is the running back next to Howe. Play action. Howe will now lob it down the near side. Newsome with a man all over him. Pins the ball against the back of the defender and brings it in. Heels can get a first down at the 3. Howe, pump fake to the right. Now he's going to run to the left. Howe at the 5. Takes the shot. Pinballing off the chains for the touchdown. Sam Howe showing the toughness for 6. Cardinals down 4, 35-31. May has the shotgun snap. Pressure coming. Rolls to the right. Throws to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Antoine Green! 16 seconds to go. No flag. Snapping it off the 8-yard line. May pulls it, tries to roll to the far side. Oh, now he's going to throw it and score! Throws it to Payson in the end zone for the touchdown. They are from the play for the left hand. Touchdown was rolling out on the run and threw it left-handed. Nard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio, he's going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. It's your host, Anthony Pagnotta, here with you guys, as always, coming at you guys on a Monday night as we get ready to recap Carolina's game against the Clemson Tigers. Another blowout for the Tar Heels, a 38-10 loss to Clemson. And so we'll sift through that game and really just talk about the overall direction of the program, because there is a hot debate going on right now as to where you should be with this program. There's some people that want to remain patient. There's some people that are currently panicking. Which side of that are we on? We'll tell you coming up here on this edition of the podcast. But I did want to start by doing something that the football program itself couldn't actually do until earlier this morning, and that is recognize some great plays from one of the greatest that we've seen in Carolina history. That would be Drake May. What a tremendous performance he had last night for the New England Patriots. That's why I'm rocking his jersey tonight on this edition of the podcast. And he ends up picking up a win over the Buffalo Bills. A strong day from him. Michael Carter finds the end zone for the Arizona Cardinals. And Javonte Williams with 2 touchdowns in the game for the Dallas Cowboys. So Tar Heels, former Mac Brown guys, really performing well. And we just, I think need to take a minute to acknowledge that here, because the football program itself doesn't want to seem to acknowledge that, especially when it comes to the Drake May side of things, because of the team that he seems to play for.
Yeah, it was fun watching him play last night, his first ever start in prime time on the road in a raucous environment in a whiteout in Buffalo. And he led the Patriots to an upset win over the last undefeated team in the National Football League, was sensational in the second half. It was cool getting to hear Chris Collinsworth kind of sound about Drake the way that you hear him usually sound about Patrick Mahomes or even Josh Allen. So that was pretty neat. That was pretty fun. And it's a lot of fun watching Drake May beat someone other than the Panthers and playing well in the process. And then, Michael Carter had a good day. Javonte Williams, a career high, I think, for rushing for the Dallas Cowboys. Cedric Gray had some big plays defensively for Tennessee and their miraculous come-from-behind win over Arizona. And what you're doing on Sundays is you're just really missing those guys more than we already do. All those guys were unique and special in their own way, and they were a lot of fun to watch during their times in Chapel Hill. And with what we're having to endure right now, that's really all we can kind of glean hope to, is the fact that we did at one point produce quality football players and have big-time players come through the program, because after 5 games and 3 blowouts, feels like we're a long way away from having the likes of Drake May, Michael Carter, Javonte Williams walking through the doors at Kenan Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, the hope is that, these guys that are committed to the current recruiting class are going to stay on board. But we're going to have to talk about all that as we go throughout this edition of the podcast, because I don't want to rush through this just yet. I do want to talk about the actual game and what happened, what was the reasons why Carolina lost the game. And, it really starts with the fact that you come out, you immediately, you're kicking the ball off, get the ball second half. It's whatever, that's something that I think makes a lot of sense for Carolina, because you want to have that ball after halftime, give yourself a chance to get back into the game if you are trailing, which you figured there was a pretty good chance that this was going to be the case against Clemson, because Dabo Swinney, he was going to be motivated to come out and put together a strong performance. Clemson was 1-3 coming into this game. They were a team that, preseason we were talking about potentially winning a national championship. And so for them, they wanted to come out and make a statement. And boy, did they. First play of the game, Carolina gives up a wide receiver a thrown touchdown from Antonio Williams to TJ Moore, where the guy ends up staying in bounds after Carolina just completely blows the coverage over the top. Thaddeus Dixon, the best corner for Carolina, makes a huge mistake, gets his eyes caught in the backfield, and gives up a huge touchdown play. And from that point forward, it never felt like Carolina stood a chance in this game. The next drive, it was a 3-play drive, but this one, another explosive play, this time to Adam Randall for the touchdown, where nobody even attempts to make a tackle. And could he have been out of bounds? Yeah, I guess it's possible. They reviewed it. Didn't look like he ended up stepping out of bounds, and it was just pathetic tackling really all around, but especially from Will Hardy, a guy that we thought was going to be a really big part of this team this season. And this was just the beginning of what was a disastrous day for this pass defense, because Carolina allowed 399 yards and 5 touchdowns. Cade Klubnik, 22 of 24 for 254 yards and 4 touchdowns. He looked like a Heisman contender in this game after looking pretty bad in the first four games of the season for Clemson prior to their bye week and to this game. We said it, man. We knew coming in, this was a team that he had, he had played really well against, and he played well again in this one, absolutely torching Carolina the entire day. And I think a lot of it has to be due to Carolina's lack of pressure. I don't care what Pro Football Focus tells me that there were 21 pressures in this game. I don't believe them. I was there in person. He had no pressure on him for the majority of the day. And Carolina's secondary making way too many mistakes yet again, leading to another big day for a passing game against Carolina. And this is now three games that we've seen against power conference competition. And we'll talk overall about the team's pathetic performance against power conference competition. But this is defensively 3 different quarterbacks who have torn you up. Josh Hoover was one thing. He's a guy that's playing incredibly well. I think he's going to start climbing draft boards as the season goes along. Cade Klubnik is, a guy that was a former 5-star player, is someone that a lot of people had hopes for coming into the season. Still, you probably should have put together a better performance against him. But Taven Jackson, the backup quarterback for Central Florida, he ended up tearing you up too. I mean, it's just happening too many times for this to be looked at as a coincidence. I think at this point, we just have to call it what it is. This pass defense is terrible.
Oh, yeah. There isn't an aspect of this football team that's good. You said you didn't want to rush through what happened on Saturday happened. What happened on Saturday is the latest example of Carolina not having the talent, the depth, or the coaching to match up with what they've seen from schools from the Big 12 and now the ACC. How many times whenever Carolina would beat some opponent during the Roy Williams era, he would say, we beat them because we were more gifted than they were. And that was, that'd be his explanation. There's a talent deficit that I don't know top to bottom if we've ever seen as Carolina fans. and I want to make it known, I'm 29 years old. I fell in love with this program when they were going 3-9. When Butch Davis was building it from the ground up. Back then, when you literally had to do it that way, because you didn't have the transfer portal, you didn't have NIL, you didn't have revenue sharing to buy players. You had to build your foundation from the ground up. We saw the last 2 years of what this program looked like under Larry Fedora. I still think those rosters more gifted than what Carolina has put on the field so far this season. Those 2 years, there was a talent issue. There was also some injuries that played a big part as to why those teams were as bad as they were. But your Carolina looks like a group of 5 team on the football field right now. That's the look that they give. That's the vibe that they give. They're not big. They're not fast. They're not athletic outside of a handful of guys at various positions. And the one thing that we thought would be able to overcome that would be the coaching, would be the schemes, would be the things that having the Belichick and an NFL-laden staff on campus will be able to overcome some of those deficiencies. And that hasn't happened so far. And it doesn't give you a reason to believe that it's going to happen moving forward, which means that every time that Carolina takes the field, you should expect them to not only lose, but get blown out in the process. And that should not happen with schools like Cal, Stanford, Wake Forest still on the schedule. But that's just the reality of the situation where Carolina is right now. The outlook is very, very bleak. And it really puts a damper on where we were, December 11th a year ago, and the excitement that we had from that moment, and that excitement that built throughout an offseason where Carolina, did some roster upgrades. They sold out season tickets. There was a lot of, I thought, positive momentum that the program did take strides in back in the early spring, but it's really just been a comedy of errors ever since, the Jordan Hudson stuff kind of started getting reported back March, April. And it's carried over into the season where we watch a team that we love, we watch a team that we care about get embarrassed and humiliated. And in the process, they've become the laughing stock of college football. And I don't think that's something we were prepared to say upon Belichick's arrival.
Yeah, and you said that it's a talent gap on defense. No, it's really not. It's not. This team is not that devoid of talent. This is pathetic coaching. This is a group that should be much better than they are. I mean, you went out and got guys in the transfer portal. And granted, some of these guys were not starters, but you got a lot of these guys from power conference programs. How are you not better? That's what doesn't make any sense to me. You should be better than you are. And I don't care what anybody says about, 70 new players, all this. That is a line of crap. I don't care. There are how many other teams in the country, including Central Florida, a team that you just played, that had 60-plus new players and looks 10 times better than you do. They're at least able to compete. You cannot tell me that this was the expectation and that we should have been expecting this going into the season, that we should have known that this was what was coming. There are some guys, you could say that this is a, group of 5 level defense. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be competing. There are a group of 5 level teams that would compete better than Carolina and have competed better than Carolina has this year against power conference competition. Like, Carolina is on a pace to be the worst team in program history. Especially, defensively, it is as bad as it gets. Their EPA is like negative 32.7, which is just absolutely a joke. That shows you right there everything that you need to know, that this roster is flawed, but at the same time, this coaching staff just isn't doing the things that they need to do. They don't have these guys prepared going into these games. It's just, that's the point that it's at. And especially on the defensive side of the ball, I don't know how you can prepare for what you saw on the first play of the game, maybe that's something that they did. I mean, to me, it looked like they were trying to prepare for that with how deep they were playing Thaddeus Dixon, but that might have just been a coincidence. But I mean, this team looked shell-shocked by anything that Clemson did. Every little thing that they did on the offensive side of the ball, Carolina had absolutely no answers for. And then, I mean, don't even get me started on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, the offensive side of the ball, it's really simple. I think that, when it comes to the quarterback spot, Carolina's just limited. With Max Johnson, I think you saw a much better performance than you saw from Gio Lopez in any of the 4 games that we saw. But I think you need to know that going into this, this is what it is. It's going to be very limited. He's going to be a guy that's going to throw a lot of stuff either behind the line of scrimmage or within that 10-yard of the line of scrimmage mark. And that's where he's going to make a lot of his hay. Is it going to result in a lot of big plays? Probably not, but you're hoping that it methodically moves the offense down the field. That did not happen in this game. So, I think you just have to come to terms with the fact that, Freddie Kitchens is not getting more creative on the offensive side of the ball. There doesn't seem to be any creativity to his offense. It's very simple. I wouldn't say vanilla. I think it's just a very simple offense where if you execute it the way that you're supposed to, it will work. But that takes such a fine level of execution that these guys just are not necessarily capable of. And you can look at the talent that Carolina has. I think that certainly is an issue on the offensive line, and we'll talk about them here in a second. But I think, just overall, I think you're handcuffed with the quarterback position, but you also don't have the skill players that I think you thought you had outside of Jordan Shipp, who really seems to be standing out.
Yeah, I thought Max, for all he had to endure on Saturday, played about as well as you could have asked him to, considering the first time he touched the football, he was already facing a deficit, and we were 11 seconds into the football game.
Yep.
And to his credit, he drove Carolina down the field, and they got a field goal. It wasn't the opening game script touchdown that Freddie Kitchens has been able to deliver in his first handful of games, but it got Carolina on the board. It gave you a reason to think that, okay, if this is going to become a track meet, can they go possession for possession with Clemson? But it wasn't meant to be. If Bill Belichick is serious and this is another reevaluation period, I don't see how Freddie Kitchens stays employed. You're talking about the worst offense of any power conference team in college football with talent that should not be producing that. You've got dudes that in modern systems would put up legitimate numbers and would be, reasons to still watch this team play because it could be an exciting brand to watch them even if they were going to lose. But that's just not right now in the cards with the way that Carolina wants to function. They struggled to get the football to Jordan Shipp. They couldn't run the football. And once, the game became 14-3, 21-3, 28-3, all Clemson, the defensive lineman, had to do was pin their ears back, and they just lived in Carolina's backfield far too often, putting, continuous pressure on Max. And then there were just times where Carolina, couldn't even try to establish a run game. So, it was the type of result that I think if Clemson was what I thought Clemson was going to be back in the preseason, I'd still be disappointed, but it'd be a lot more understanding. This was a team that entered the game 1-3. This was a team that trailed by double digits by 2 possessions at home to Troy. This was a team that had not scored more than, 20 points in a game? They scored 28 in the first quarter. 35 in the first half. Were on their way to playing 76 dudes in the football game. They did to you what they should have did to Troy, what they probably should have done to a Syracuse team that, lost their quarterback during that game. And they called the dogs off in the middle of the third quarter. Like if Dabo Sweeney was really the type of coach that he gets portrayed to be, Clemson could have put 70 up on Carolina, without even blinking. Just like James Madison did last year, just like Georgia Tech did back during Larry Fedora's first year. They could have really put a hurting on Carolina's numbers even further statistically, but Dabo, chose to play the other guys the depth piece and kind of just enjoying that victory. So it was, for the third time this year, you come away with your eyes open, almost just in a daze at how far it feels. It feels like Carolina is from just being competitive. And I don't think that was something that we ever really anticipated saying out loud. It's gotten to the point where Michael Lombardi had to write a note to the donors comparing what Carolina's about to do to the processing 76ers. And if you don't know what they did, go and look at it. They effectively tanked for 4 years before they tried to start winning. So it really leaves you questioning what exactly is the process of this program. What are they looking to achieve this year to set them up for next year? Because again, I said back when Bryce Baker was recruited, if that's the guy that Belichick wants to roll with, and we go through our lumps with him as a true freshman, I could have signed on with that. But you chose not to do that. You went and paid a transfer of $2.1 million. You got Max Johnson healthy enough to play, which was a good thing because you needed him because of what's going on with Gio. But you're seeing quarterback play and offensive production that mirrored what you saw when Nathan Elliott was the quarterback here. And I think Carolina has way too much offensive ability to be this poor on offense. And the main culprit in all that is Freddie Kitchens, who is just a disaster of a game planner and a play caller.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's very clear that he can't be the guy moving forward. I think during this bye week, they need to look in the mirror, tell him that, look, you can be the tight ends coach, which you had a lot of success with while you were here under Mac Brown. That is certainly an area that we feel like we need to be better coached in. So we can allow you to do that, but you are not going to be the offensive play caller. We will turn to either Matt Lombardi or somebody else on staff. Garrick McGee has been an offensive coordinator at one time as well. I think that is certainly something that they have to do because there needs to be more creativity offensively if Carolina is going to be a better offensive team as the year goes along. It would also help if they could get some blocking from the guys up front. This team is just trending in the wrong direction in just about every area, and the offensive line is one of those units. 23 of the 24 quarterback pressures that were given up by the offensive line, including both sacks that were given up. Somehow only 2 sacks were given up by Carolina in this game. But you're talking about 8 quarterback pressures allowed by Ja'Kai Moore, 8 quarterback pressures allowed by Austin Blasky, and 6 allowed by Willow Steen. I can tell you right now, the experiment with Austin Blasky at left tackle is not working. That is certainly something that this staff misevaluated. They thought they would be able to plug him in at just about any spot, and he would be able to succeed. That is not the case. He is not ready to be a left tackle for Carolina. And I know this was the best offensive or defensive line that they faced, but he wasn't exactly great in the first game that he played either at that position. And maybe it is that he's still hampered by the injury, but I don't think that Carolina can look at that as the long-term solution out there. Ja'Kai Moore is starting to come back to earth a little bit after he started the season pretty well. Again, best defensive line that you faced, but who knows what it's going to be like moving forward, where there are some pretty good defensive lines that Carolina is going to have to take on as the season goes along. And Willow Steen, you better hope that they get Aiden Banfield back quickly. Aiden Banfield was pretty bad in pass protection, through the first 4 games of the season. It wasn't great, but it was certainly better than what Willow Steen gave you the other day. He was pretty bad as a pass protector. Pretty bad as a run blocker. Run blocking for this offensive line doesn't even exist. I mean, this offensive line could care less about run blocking, it seems like. There's only one guy that really graded out well in run blocking, or two of them. Austin Blasky graded out at a 68.4, which is solid, 66.1 for Chad Lindbergh, which is okay. But everybody else just graded out terribly, including Ja'Kai Moore, who had the lowest at a 41.5, Osteen at a 49.8, and then Daniel King at a 56.7. I mean, this simply just can't happen for Carolina if they're going to be able to succeed. So, I mean, this offense is really bad, but this offensive line certainly not setting Max Johnson up for success in the first two games that we've seen Max Johnson, almost or pretty exclusively after that TCU game. I mean, we saw him against Central Florida be under a lot of pressure, and then that carried over into this game against Clemson.
Yeah, the offensive line, I think every worst case scenario that we maybe could have imagined back in the preseason has definitely come to fruition. And this was the group that Phil Steele had the highest rated of any position group back in his preseason rankings. This was the group that he identified that Carolina, with all the new pieces and new parts, was the group he felt the best about. And we have not seen that show up once outside of the opening drive of the season against TCU when they walked right down the field and scored. Outside of that, you haven't seen that level of offensive line play. And the injuries at some point just become an excuse. They cannot be the reason why everyone looks as bad as they look, and why they're getting pushed and thrown around the way that they are. And you're not getting any, you're not getting any separation in the run game. You're not holding up in the pass block game. And you're just getting overwhelmed. And I just was not something that I think, with the way that Carolina built the offensive line, I guess I just wasn't prepared to see that, because they built it to be big and beefy and, be able to protect their small quarterback. And that just has not translated once all season long. And you're missing guys like Travion Green, who decided to leave the program. And it's just another area where they lack talent. But I mean, you can call the coaching into question. Like, this is as bad as the offensive line play we've seen. And, you're talking about offensive lines that derailed seasons back when Carolina was at once 9-1 and 6-0 under Mac Brown. And we came on here and said, because those groups wore down, that's why those teams couldn't achieve what they wanted to achieve. Well, it's the same thing here. But not only is it hindering Carolina from winning games, it's not allowing Carolina to be competitive in games against power conference competition. And, look, I tried to be optimistic. I tried to not really buy or look at it the way that I should have. But we probably should have known after Charlotte we were in deep doo-doo. I mean, I think I made more excuses for them than anyone has ever made on a podcast ever. Because I really excused how they only won that game 20-3, when they should have won that game probably like 56-0. But that's where Carolina is at right now. There's not an area where you can point to and expect there to be adequate play on either side of the football. But the fact that you're not even close to adequate in the trenches doesn't give you a chance to be competitive. And that's why these games have been as lopsided as they've been so far against Power 4 competition.
All right, we've spent enough time talking about the game. Now it's time to just talk about where this program is at right now, because this team, again, looks overmatched, outcoached, and that was something that we thought you wouldn't be able to tell under Bill Belichick. You thought that this team was going to at least be coached well enough to where you weren't going to be able to tell if Carolina was lacking in talent. And maybe that expectation was too much. Maybe it was too much to expect Carolina to win games. But I will not take it from fans that say, well, no, you should have expected that they weren't going to be competitive. Guys, this is as uncompetitive of a Power 4 conference team that we have seen in a long time. Carolina is on the same pace that Oklahoma State is this year, as two of the most uncompetitive power conference teams that we have seen in a long, long time. That should not be acceptable. That's the thing that I just don't understand, is that people are saying this is what we should have expected under Bill Belichick. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. And Hayden asked this question on YouTube. Do we think that Mac Brown is laughing? Yes, I think Mac Brown is laughing, because guess what? There are people like me that say the way that this season is going, it really makes you miss Mac Brown. And it should make you miss Mac Brown. I know that people say, well, you know, it was time for him to go. Everybody's bringing up the James Madison game as a reason why you shouldn't miss Mac Brown. At least those teams were competitive. At least it felt like the coach on the sideline gave a damn about the result that was happening on Saturdays, because I don't know if Bill Belichick cares. I've gotten to that point where I just don't think there is a care factor for the guy that is on the sidelines. I think he's someone that took this job. He thought it was going to be easy, and since it isn't, he's going to probably end up rolling over and not caring as the season goes along. And I think you can tell that by the way that he acts on the sidelines. You could say that he did the same things in New England. No, he didn't. He was more involved in New England than he was at Carolina. He wasn't completely separated from the team when they were in huddles. He was out there trying to coach guys up. You could see that there was a difference. That fire is gone. We thought that the fire was still there for him to be successful. But the thing is that once he saw that this was going to be a lot of effort, I don't know if he put in the work that he had to. I mean, this is a guy that during the bye week is going on a trip to Nantucket, and we're supposed to be okay with that during the bye week. It was one thing when you were going on vacations during the summer, during some of the dead periods of recruiting and everything like that, during times where you could not be with your team and preparing for the upcoming season. But when you are doing this during times that you're supposed to be getting better, that's what drives me absolutely insane. So, I mean, look, this is right now just a complete disaster. There is no one that could have imagined that it was going to be this bad right off the bat. And I mean, at this point, it's hard not to be in the headspace of where does this go from here? And how, concerned about the overall direction of the program. Not to mention, and we'll get to the other stuff that's being written about the program right now, but I think just surface level, that was the thought sitting in the stands the other day, was how have we gotten to this point? How has it gotten this bad already when he's only been on the job for 5 games so far? He's only been on the job for, 9 months? And it's gotten to this point already. I don't understand how it's gotten that bad that quickly under what is supposed to be the greatest coach in the history of the sport of football. But I'm going to tell you right now, all those concerns that people had with him coming from New England, a lot of those are starting to look like valid concerns as we sit here right now.
Well, I think we're learning the hard way why the NFL gave him the middle finger and no one hired him. When he was actively looking for NFL jobs after being let go in New England, and everyone thought was going to maybe land in Atlanta. Maybe thought Jerry Jones, when he moved on from Mike McCarthy, was going to take him to Dallas. He's always said how he wants to coach the Giants. The Giants weren't willing to move on from a losing coach to bring him in. I think we're learning all these lessons right now the hard way. And I find myself very conflicted on what I want to believe. Because I was the guy that the morning after he got hired was buying Belichick gear at work at 4:30 in the morning. Because, for the first time in my life, I thought I had seen a program that I care about so much commit to football in a way that I've been begging them to my entire life. And you thought it was going to be, the the little giant being awoken, and that Carolina was finally going to be a program that mattered in college football, because we have to sit here and watch Indiana play meaningful football games. We just watched Vanderbilt go toe-to-toe with Alabama for a second straight year. They beat them a year ago, played 60 minutes with them this past year. Illinois has emerged as a team that can make the college football playoff. And I have to watch those schools and those programs, and that should inspire belief that we could get it done here, because I think Carolina is a better position to win than all those other schools. But instead, I'm 2-3, and I've been non-competitive in a single game against Power 4 competition. And we were in the stadium for TCU. I was in the stadium for Richmond. I really try not to put a whole lot into the Belichick isn't involved thing. I was like, well, that's Belichick. But to me, it was eye-opening on Saturday, just seeing how disconnected he was from his own team, from the fans in the stands. That carried over after the game when the team did not even sing the alma mater and just walked back into the tunnel after getting their butt kicked. We've seen bad football culture in our time as Carolina fans. The last 2 years of Larry Fedora were really, really bad. Kind of what you just endured during the NCAA at times made it hard to have the type of culture you need to have to win in modern college football. But it's even worse now. You check Twitter during the games, and you're seeing guys that weren't even 10 years removed from the program just laughing at what's happening. Because that's what Carolina is. I mean, people now watch Carolina to laugh at Carolina, and not because they're intrigued,
including their own fans.
Like what's going to happen when you watch this team play. So, I never thought we would be here in year one. I mean, I always knew deep down there was a chance this thing could go sideways, but did I think you would go sideways in 5 games? No. And it's at the point now where if Carolina were to seek an avenue to get rid of him, I wouldn't even be upset. I wouldn't come on here and argue against it. I'm not arguing for it, but I wouldn't argue against it. And that's nowhere to be as a fan, especially when you're a fan of this program that hasn't won a conference title since 1980. Like the one thing that makes being a UNC football fan interesting and unique is usually you have some sort of hope that maybe this is the year they do X, Y, and Z. Where's the hope? Where's the belief that we're going to do the types of things we thought we were going to do when we hired this man? Because they're not present right now, and I don't know how far away they are from being present here moving forward.
They don't deserve to be present. Like, you should not believe that this team is going to magically turn it around. Like, in year 2, you should not think that this is going to be an easy fix. Like, anybody that thinks that it is, that all of a sudden in year 2, well, they're just going to bring in 40 freshmen and all of a sudden Carolina is going to be good. They're going to bring in, 30 new transfers out of the transfer portal and all of a sudden Carolina is going to be good. Well, what's going to be your damn excuse whenever they come out next year and all of a sudden it's the same thing? And then we're saying, well, no, there were 70 new players this year, right? That needs to take more time. No, that's not how it works. That's not when you hire a coach that's 73 years old. That's not how it works. You hired a guy to win immediately. That's why you made that hire. That's why you sunk all that money into him. You gave this guy $10 million for this. This is what we've got to deal with, because this is worse than Mac Brown. I don't care what anybody says. I would rather be back to 6-6 and losing games to James Madison than dealing with this. At least with Mac Brown, this team was competitive in conference games and could win conference games. They can't do that right now. This team's not going to win a conference game, folks. They're not going to win a Power 4 game. Their wins are going to be against what might be one of the worst FBS teams in history in Charlotte and Richmond, a team in the FCS that I don't even know how good they're really going to be this year. So unless you are hanging your hat on those wins and think that that is something to brag about, I don't know what you're really looking at from this year and thinking is going to be successful. And it's not going to get better as the year goes along because we're already seeing Carolina had a bye week and they had a chance to get better. We thought, okay, it's got to look better after this bye week because this was your practice time that you had. You've got one more of these and that's it. The rest of the season, you don't have this time to get more practice in and become a better team. And what did we see in this performance? I thought this was the worst that they looked. I don't know about you because and the final score would not suggest it, but I'm with you. I think they took their foot off the gas. I thought this was the worst that we have seen this team play because it was not even competitive from the word go. You let up 28 points in the first quarter to this team. How do you respond from that? It doesn't get worse than that. It just doesn't.
Yeah, they've played three of the worst, and the TCU game was not even as bad as the final score would indicate. Like it was 20-7 before he threw the pick, and then that's when the train went off the tracks. Saturday might be like bottom 5 performance I've ever seen. And again, I want to remind folks, like I fell in love when this program was going 3-9 and beating McNeese State 28-27. That's when I fell in love with Carolina football. So I've seen some crap, and I've lived through some crap. This is an all-time level of crap that I just was not prepared. I was just not prepared to see. And there doesn't seem to be a sense of urgency because you're back on a bye week again. And granted, maybe you make the move, but because you don't have to meet with the media, you wait till next Monday to report it. But like coaches should be getting fired, or there should just be, changes and stuff being rearranged with what you're doing because what you're doing isn't working. And I'm not talking about working because you're getting beat. You're not being competitive. If Carolina was 2-3, but all 3 losses were by a possession, we would say, hey, that's part of like that. We could use the 70 new players. We could use a coaching staff adapting to the college. We could use all those ready-made excuses that were built in. But you can't use those excuses when you're getting blown out the way that you're getting blown out and you're not making any adjustment from game to game, week to week, drive to drive. So, I mean, it kind of makes you wonder, we kind of saw this, up close. Like this just has the feelings of what we saw with the Panthers when they put together that all-star coaching staff and it never once translated to the field. Like that's what this is reminding me of, where, that was a brutal Panther season, although they were technically more competitive on the scoreboard, but it was like everything was too good to be true, and it wasn't. And I think that's the story that's being written here right now. And I mean, we're a month and 5 days removed from the feeling that we felt when it was 7-0 against TCU. And Kenan Stadium was as loud as I can ever remember. It was right up there with the Cam Sexton touchdown run against Notre Dame, right there with the flea flicker against Duke in 2015, and the Daz Newsome catch against Miami in 2019 when Mac Brown came back. That's how loud that stadium was. And after that moment, it's been all downhill from there, where in all 3 of your home games, the stands have been empty for one reason or another by the middle of the third quarter, the start of the fourth.
Yeah, I mean, and the one home game that you actually would want to stay for would have been the Richmond game, and you didn't stay for that one because it's a blowout. Fans end up rolling out, and there wasn't a whole lot of fans in the stands to begin with because they were playing an FCS team. But the 2 games that you played against Power 4 competition at home, you have been blown out so bad that at halftime, everybody is rolling. They are saying this is just not worth sticking around for. That's a pathetic spot to be in. And the worst one to me is still that Central Florida game. I mean, you're talking about a team in Central Florida that's probably going to finish last in the Big 12 or second to last in the Big 12 because I did not expect Oklahoma State was going to be this bad. But, I mean, yeah, that's a team that is not good. They are not a good football program, and you could not even compete with them on the same field. That's the thing. The TCU game, you're right. It was 20-7. It didn't really necessarily look that bad. We were passing off some of the defensive struggles because it was the first game of the year, and you looked at what you looked at what Carolina was doing, offensively, turning the ball over, leading to 2 scores. That's what made that game worse, it felt like. Since then, things have only gotten worse. It's progressing in the wrong direction. And my thing is if you don't have the talent on this roster, I thought this was a group that was supposed to coach these guys up and develop these guys as the season went along to where you would be able to find a way to compete in some of these games, potentially win some of these games. We're not seeing that. It's getting worse by the week. I mean, you look at this week, the fundamentals. Well, we worked on fundamentals during the off week. Well, did you? Because you missed 12 tackles in this game. You gave up 245 yards after the catch. Of the 399, 245 of those came after the catch, which shows you that Carolina's just not tackling well at all. It's just a complete disaster. Guys are not where they are supposed to be. The communication is poor. And now, here's the thing about all this. You could say, well, you know what? It's still year one. You got to give these guys time. Well, now you're getting these reports that are coming out, and you're getting some of these journalists that are covering the team that are basically saying, I mean, Andrew Jones pretty much said on his Facebook earlier this morning, you don't even know the half of it. That this is what we're talking about right now is only the start of what is just a complete disaster behind the scenes. Then you have the article that's written by Pat Welter of WRAL that was put up a little while ago, a little over 2 hours ago, that details the fact that there is no culture within the program. There's just it's a complete disaster of between the coaches, favoring certain guys on the roster, favoring Bill Belichick guys, even though they decided to keep around some of these Mac Brown guys. You can see that there's preferential treatment, guys that are missing classes but not being held accountable for it, as opposed to other guys that are on the roster doing the same thing and losing playing time. There's preferential treatment for certain transfers, like Thaddeus Dixon and Kamori House, which could be leading to some of the issues that are happening in the locker room, leading to some of that divide. And then they basically say it feels like an individualistic type of team where everybody is worried about themselves. They're not worried about the team because this is a team that just didn't bond in the offseason. They didn't do the things that they were supposed to during that time to become a better group. When you hear these kinds of things and you hear that basically the locker room is starting to turn on this experiment, there are certain guys in the locker room that are starting to turn on this experiment already. I think that sort of shows you that there is a problem here that we did not foresee, and that this is not just a slow start to the Bill Belichick era. This is a real issue and a real problem with the culture. The culture was supposed to get better in Chapel Hill when they hired whoever was the next head coach that they were supposed to hire. We thought that Bill Belichick coming in, there'd be a culture of toughness. There'd be a culture of doing the little things that you're supposed to do to be able to succeed on game day. Carolina doesn't have any of that stuff so far to start the season. I mean, the toughness, certainly not pretty much non-existent. And I mean, in terms of doing the things that you're supposed to do on the field, the fundamentals and the little things, Carolina's not doing any of that this season, and it's led to where Carolina's at right now.
Yeah, I think that's what's the most disappointing aspect of this, right, was you moved on from Mac Brown and you basically said his lack of toughness and from a culture standpoint held the program back as the reason why you had the struggles to end what could have been big time years when you were 9-1 and 6-0. Well, let's go bring in a guy that all he is about toughness, whether it's mental or physical, and none of that has shown up so far through his first 5 games. And I haven't gotten a chance to read the Pat Welter article. I'll get my eyes on that after we get done here, but it'd be it would be one thing if it was just one guy that was reporting, hey, this is just a complete and utter disaster. It's not. It's him. It's Andrew Jones, who is as plugged in as anybody. And, is give him credit, man. He tries to ask the big questions in these pressers, but Belichick just skirts around him. But, he basically alluded to on his Facebook page that he can't say what's happening just yet. But basically was alluding to doesn't think he gets through the year. And once, Carolina maybe makes that decision and he can report some of this stuff, that we won't be able to comprehend the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. I mean, it's just embarrassing. Because especially as someone that bought in, that believed that this was the right move to bring Carolina to the forefront of the college football world, because Mac Brown had embarrassing losses. And I guess you could say what happened after James Madison was embarrassing to the university in a lot of ways, where he effectively threatened to quit, but didn't quit. But like Bill Belichick, he's made Carolina as an entity a laughingstock. That's what we are right now. We're a joke. And I take that very personal because what that place means to me, how much money we invest going to games and covering the team the way that we cover the team. This guy is, just doing kind of whatever the hell he wants, but not winning. And that's what we paid you $10 million to do. We didn't pay you $10 million to come here and have a grand old time and enjoy the fine dining of Franklin Street. We brought you in because we wanted to win. And I think now more than ever, we're really about to find out how committed this school is to football. Because if they're committed to football, like they say they are, he doesn't coach past the season. And you buy him out, you make him go away, and you bring in a whole new staff. And if they do that, then I think that'll continue to keep me believing in Chancellor Roberts' message that he wants to bring football to the forefront, which I am a fan of. I believe in that, especially if this school wants to go to the SEC by the end of the decade. So I think we're really about to find out just how much this school wants to be big time at football, because if they want to be, I don't know how much longer Bill Belichick will be on the sidelines in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know either. And to me, I think it's going to come down to his willingness to continue to coach Carolina. I don't think they're going to have the money to buy him out. I really don't. I think the money that they sank into the program, they're going to want to continue to justify that. I think, depending on how bad it gets, the right move would be to let him go after the season is over and just flush it and restart there. I don't care. I don't give a damn about the recruiting class that Carolina would have coming in and everything like that falling apart, whatever. You bring in a legitimate college football head coach, someone that wants to build a program, because this is not building a program. And, people are telling me the other day, well, it's going to take time. It's going to take 3, 4, sometimes, somebody said to me, it could take 5 years to build a program here. Guys, I need you to realize that you hired a 73-year-old coach. There's a chance that within 4 or 5 years, the man isn't even on this planet, let alone coaching this program. So how are you supposed to preach that? And in terms of the fact that, year one, we have to give them a break. They weren't able to talent evaluate. Guys, they started on the transfer portal 2 days later than everybody else. That's it. There were most of the big name guys were still out there. They still got in contact with John Mateer. They still offered him the NIL money to be their starting quarterback. It didn't go their way. Their talent evaluation is poor. I mean, you go back and the way that, guys are being treated within the program as well. Not only is Michael Lombardi not doing a great job of evaluating the talent, apparently he is exactly what we thought he was when he was in the media. He's rude. He's nasty. These are some of the things that people are saying to Pat Welter in that article. And that basically They told Ryan Brown, the starting quarterback for the team back in the spring, one of the guys that was battling for the starting job, they told him, hey, we're taking away your NIL money. We are not going to give you a chance to stick around here and be a part of this football program moving forward. Then they decide, you know what? We're going to go out and spend the money on Gio Lopez. We think that's a sound investment. Well, that's turned into a complete disaster. By the way, Max Johnson, your current quarterback, there is belief that according to sources around the program, Max Johnson isn't getting paid any NIL money to be your quarterback, that you are basically just rolling with him out there with no NIL money coming his way, which if that is the truth, then you should absolutely love Max Johnson. You should think that this guy is a saint amongst, college football players nowadays, because college football players nowadays are all about the money. They're paying the rest of the guys on this roster pretty significant money to be here. And Max Johnson is the guy that isn't getting paid. That goes back to the preferential treatment for guys that were recruited by Bill Belichick as opposed to the guys that were holdovers from the Mac Brown era. It just seems like a complete disaster. And the fact of the matter is that you should not be this uncompetitive. You should not have these culture problems 5 games into this experiment. This was a team that was supposed to be far more competitive than they are. This was a group that was supposed to have one of the best cultures in the entire country. And you were supposed to feel like this was a group that was coming together because this staff was going to unite guys. They have not done any of that. They have instead, they have created a culture where basically everybody's an individual. And you would imagine that means there's a pretty significant divide in the locker room. There's probably guys that feel like the Mac Brown guys on the roster should not be there, when in some respects, the guys that are holdovers for Mac Brown's roster are probably better than a lot of the guys that they brought in out of the transfer portal. So I don't understand where that entitlement comes from, that you were brought here by Bill Belichick. That doesn't mean anything. Bill Belichick's talent evaluation in New England wasn't great at the end. Same thing with Michael Lombardi. There's a reason why Michael Lombardi was fired from his job at the NFL level. This is turning into a complete disaster. And here's the thing. You have one guy to thank for all of this, and that is John Pryor. And I said this the other night when I was doing the recap video. John Pryor, you are a moron that needs to keep your opinions to yourself. You should have let Bubba Cunningham do the hiring. He had the guys that he wanted. There would not have maybe been nearly as much buy-in to the program as we thought. I mean, my thing is that I don't understand how there wasn't more buy-in under Mac Brown, how you couldn't get more money for Mac Brown, but you were able to get this money for Bill Belichick. You should have been able to get a decent amount of money from people to move in the direction that your athletic director, Bubba Cunningham, wanted to move it in. Somebody brought this up earlier. I think it was Alan Lundy. Yeah, I've actually got it right here. Should have let Bubba do his job and do the hire. Let the athletic people do the hiring, not some idiot that is the board of trustees leader make the decision, along with Chancellor Roberts. The Chancellor Roberts is another guy who was really pushing for Bill Belichick to be the guy. Dude, you're the chancellor of the school. You are not someone that should be making athletic decisions. Let Bubba Cunningham do his job. When eventually Steve Newmark takes over, let Steve Newmark do his job. Because here's the thing. It makes you wonder if what happens with this hire goes wrong. What happens if Hubert Davis is to fail later on this year and Carolina makes the move? Are they going to let Bubba Cunningham, Steve Newmark, are they going to let those guys actually make the new basketball hire, or is it going to be the board of trustees and Chancellor Roberts that are going to be pushing for some outside hire that's crazy in those respects?
Yeah, it's not unfair to ask that question, and I guess we should have known when he got hired, and we learned how he got hired. It wasn't going to work, because it wasn't what you think it would be when you hire a coach that won 8 Super Bowls. There wasn't 100% buy-in. it was a divided, cabinet of people that are in high-ranking positions at Carolina, whether they're the chancellor or they're on the rank, they're a booster, no matter what it is. This wasn't like, when they went to go bring Roy Williams home and everyone and their mother agreed that was the right decision. No, the hire was very taboo. The hire was very much split down the middle. But some people that had more power, more say, more money were able to get their influence over the others. But it is, took 5 weeks, and this thing is a train that's come completely off the tracks and is going to nosedive into a river somewhere. There's not right now a happy ending in sight for this. And I don't know what the happy ending was going to be when he got hired. I think in my head, I kind of thought maybe he would get one more run of the NFL, go back, get the record, and call it quits. But he's not going to the NFL. And so if he's going to be stubborn to continue coaching, well, then you've got to make the decision about what to do with him if you don't think he's no longer the right man for the job. And if you feel that way, no one's going to argue with you because of what it looks like. And so, it was chaos that led to get him here. And it's been nothing but chaos since he's got here. And you can tolerate chaos when you're winning. I mean, I don't care what happens on Sundays. If my team wins, I can do a lot of different things. When your team loses, when your team loses and it's the way that it is, then it just really becomes embarrassing. And that's where Carolina is. And they've kind of got to pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and figure out who they want to be, what they want to be, and probably come to the realization that it's not going to be with Bill Belichick leading the program, because I don't think he's no longer in the best interest to lead Carolina football moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not feel like that, at this point. I mean, there are some people that still want to give him time. And to those people, I mean, yeah, all the power to you. I am not at that point. I have seen enough already. And the thing is that for me, the reason why I think you have to flush it is because if you are creating that big of a divide in the locker room already, what is it going to look like as this just continues to go along? Because there are guys, you can imagine that there are guys that already his message is starting to grow stale with. I mean, when you're losing this bad, it is bound to happen. And so if you are giving guys preferential treatment, now maybe all it takes is that you need to get Mac Brown's players out of here. But at that rate, you should have just gotten rid of everybody off the roster. You should have just said, you know what? It's a complete overhaul. We're not keeping anyone from the roster. We're not even keeping his own recruits. And you look at the guys that are succeeding. Well, you could say, well, Damon June was a guy that was brought in. Damon June was recruited here by Mac Brown and just held over under Bill Belichick. So even that one, the success that he's having, you can attribute that to Mac Brown. That's a guy that he went out and got, and they probably would have held on to if they would have ended up keeping him as head coach. So even that is something that you can't look at and say, I mean, that you're taking away from Mac Brown and giving to Bill Belichick as a success for him. Who amongst the guys that he has landed are having that successful of a season? Maybe Thaddeus Dixon. Maybe you give credit to Andrew Simpson. But even those guys have had their lapses. That's the thing that's sad. So, I mean, yeah, when you've got nothing that you can really hang your hat on, and we've said, somebody said earlier, that it just takes time. We're good. We're good at what, though? Can you explain to me one thing that this team is actually good at right now? Because I can't find it. It doesn't exist. There's nothing offensively to be positive about. There's nothing defensively to be positive about. And any hope for the special teams went out the window the other day because it was a poor day punting. They missed a field goal, and their return games have really produced zilch. That for some reason, they've made the decision to say, you know what? Chris Culliver was one of the best returners in that we have seen in a long time here. You know what we're going to do with him? We're going to take him out of the return role, and we're just going to use him exclusively at wide receiver. When, meanwhile, none of your quarterbacks can actually get him the football. It's a complete disaster. These moves that are being made by this coaching staff make no sense. And again, I think it all comes back to, does Bill Belichick actually care? If you have a coach on the sideline that doesn't care, then you are not going to be able to succeed. And to me, the fact that you are seeing him go on vacation when he is on a bye week, when his team had 2 non-competitive games against Power 4 competition, I think it tells you everything that you need to know about his time in Chapel Hill, that right now this is being looked at as as just, I don't know what it is. Just, a place where he can come and, continue to coach, but just kind of go through the motions. I don't know if that's what he thinks, but this should not be that type of job for Carolina, not when you've sunk this much money into him and into this program. So we're at this point already, guys. I mean, it's only going to get worse from here. And these murmurs are going to continue to grow louder. These reports that come out of the program are going to continue to get worse if this losing continues. They've got to figure out a way to get this turned back in the right direction, because I'm on the train of, look, I don't think you can necessarily fire him just yet, because when you look at it, you're not going to have the money to be able to fire him. It's just not going to be there. $20 million is his buyout. I don't think that Carolina is going to be sinking that much money into his buyout and then finding a coach that they're willing to pay a pretty high amount to take over after that and lead Carolina to success. You're just hoping that if this gets as bad as it possibly could get, that he ends up stepping away at the end of the season. And hopefully there is not the succession plan that was in place that we heard, was rumored, but couldn't legally be agreed to, which is that Stephen Belichick would take over for him once he was said and done. I'm not saying that the Belichicks need to be out of here, but they need to turn things around quickly and at least give you a competitive product on the field, or else this experiment needs to be over sooner rather than later. So that wraps it up for this edition of the podcast, guys. Make sure you head over to the website, heeltoughblog.com. Got the takeaways from the Clemson game up there, which includes a little bit more of that strong message towards John Pryor, as well as a couple other points from the game. So make sure that you guys go and check that out. Also, make sure that you head over to the website and check out the takeaways from the blue-white scrimmage on the basketball side of things. We made a complete day of it. Josh gives you his takeaways from that blue-white scrimmage as Carolina continues to seem towards the start of their regular season in a crucial year for Hubert Davis. The site buzzing with football and basketball news, so make sure that you guys keep an eye out for all of that. During the bye week, we'll have another stock report article that's going to be coming back. You can imagine that one is going to have a lot of guys trending down, as it should. And so we will definitely be writing that for you guys on the website and covering any news that comes out around Tar Heel football during their second bye week as they then get prepared for the Cal Golden Bears. Of course, here on the podcast side of things, we'll be on here talking to you guys. There will be interviews that we will be doing during this time. I know trying to get in contact with Bren Renner and get him on the podcast. And there's a couple other things that I'm looking to go after as well during this bye week. So should be an exciting time during this bye week for you guys, the listeners and readers on the website. So make sure that you guys follow us on the social media pages at Heel Tough Blog on Twitter, on the Facebook page, Heel Tough Blog, just search it. And then, of course, for the best viewing of the video podcast, go over to YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our page there. That would greatly help us as we continue to try to get more sponsors in here. So make sure that you guys check that out. And did want to tell you really quickly before we get out of here on this edition of the podcast, almost forgot here because we've been just so wrapped up in everything that has been going on, that we do have a new sponsor to the podcast. Our first sponsor, that would be Legacy Arcade. It is an online arcade that you guys can join, and we encourage you to. Legacy Arcade and Social Casino is a place where you can win cash prizes with roulette, blackjack, your favorite slot games, and multiplayer fish games. You can win cash prizes playing your favorite arcade games. Use the promo code HEELS to get up to $100 in free match play at registration. The best part about it is that it is safe, secure, with 24-hour customer support. You get instant redemption immediately to your bank account or card if you win. They do accept all major credit cards, Skrill and ACH, and they do have Apple Pay that is coming soon. You know, personally, I'm someone that really gets into the blackjack side of things. I think that is certainly my game at the casino. I've had some decent luck with it on the site here to begin with, so maybe you guys will too. So make sure you head over there. That'll take your mind off of everything that's going on with Carolina on the football side of things. And, hopefully moving forward, they are, not betting the future of the program on some of these like you guys will be on there. You, of course, can visit that QR code that was on the screen there. I'll throw it back up there for you again really quickly. Scan that QR code, use that promo code HEELS, and you will get $100 in free play. So make sure that you do that for us. We would greatly appreciate it. So, once again, that wraps it up for this edition of the podcast. Want to thank Josh for hosting with me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.